Queen stood alone in the war room. The lights were dim. The holographic map floated above the round table, showing her empire in blue and the enemy in red. There was too much red now, far too much. She was tall and thin, with silver skin that glowed softly in the darkness. Her eyes were large and completely black, like pools of ink. She had ruled the Solan Empire for 200 years, and in all that time she had never felt fear like this. The door opened behind her. Admiral walked in slowly. He was old, even by Solan standards. His 4 eyes were tired and his shoulders hung low. He had been a warrior for 500 years. Now he looked like a broken man. "The reports are confirmed, my queen," he said. His voice was quiet. "We have lost the system, all 7 planets, the burned everything." Closed her eyes. That was another 3 billion souls. Farmers, miners, families, all gone. "How many ships did we lose?" she asked. 47 warships, 200 transport vessels that were trying to evacuate civilians. Paused. Maybe 10,000 refugees escaped, maybe less. Turned to face him, and the losses. 3 ships damaged, none destroyed. The silence that followed was heavy. Looked back at the map. In the last 6 months, 14 star systems had fallen. The blue areas were shrinking every week. The red was spreading like a disease. "How do they do it?" whispered. "How do they always know what we will do?" Moved closer to the map. He pointed at the red zones. "They are a hive mind, my queen. Every drone is connected to every other drone. When one sees something, they all see it. When one learns something, they all learn it. They share information instantly across their entire empire." "I know what they are," said sharply. "What I want to know is how to beat them." Was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. "I do not think we can, my queen. I have studied every battle, every engagement. We try new tactics and they adapt within hours. We try surprise attacks and they predict us. We try overwhelming force and they simply absorb our strikes and counterattack." He shook his head. "They are not like any enemy we have ever faced. They do not make mistakes. They do not panic. They do not forget." Felt cold. For 3,000 years, the Solan Empire had stood strong. They had survived wars, plagues, and disasters. They had built something beautiful across 100 worlds, and now it was all falling apart. "What are our options?" she asked. "We can continue fighting," said, "but at the current rate we will lose our within 1 year, maybe sooner." He paused. "Or we can accept the offer." His jaw tightened. "Surrender." "They call it conditional peace. We would keep our lives, our culture, but we would become part of their collective. Our people would serve the—" "Slavery," said. "You are talking about slavery." Did not argue. He simply looked at her with those tired, fourfold eyes. "I need time," said. "Leave me." Bowed and left the room. Stood alone again, staring at the map of her dying empire. Far away, in the cold darkness of space, a transport ship moved slowly toward the Solan. It was old and battered, carrying nearly 2,000 refugees from the destroyed system. The ship was crowded, dirty, and filled with the sounds of crying children and worried adults. In a corner of the main cargo hold, a human woman sat on a metal crate. Her name was. She was 34 years old, with black hair tied back in a simple ponytail and dark eyes that watched everything around her. Was not supposed to be in this part of the galaxy. She had been working as a civilian contractor on 7, helping the mining companies with logistics and planning. It was boring work, but it paid well, and she had wanted to see the stars. Then the came. She remembered the attack clearly. The sky turning red as enemy ships filled the atmosphere. The screaming. The running. She had grabbed her and nothing else, fighting her way onto one of the last evacuation ships before the planet was destroyed. Now she sat in the cargo hold, surrounded by aliens who barely noticed her. Humans were rare in this part of space. Earth had only been spacefaring for 200 years, and most humans stayed close to home. Was an exception. She had always wanted to explore, to see what was out there. She had not expected to find a war. On her, she scrolled through files she had downloaded before the evacuation, tactical reports, battle summaries, intelligence assessments. She had worked with the Solan military briefly, helping them organize supply lines. She had access to information that most civilians would never see. And what she saw worried her. The Solan were losing, not slowly but quickly. They were crushing them in every engagement, and the Solan commanders seemed to have no idea how to stop it. Read report after report, attack patterns, defense strategies, fleet movements. She saw the same mistakes repeated over and over. The Solan were organized, disciplined, and predictable. They followed rules. They respected traditions. They fought the same way they had always fought. And they were eating them alive. A young Solan child wandered over to her. The girl had bright blue skin and curious eyes. She stared at like she had never seen a human before. She probably had not. "What are you?" the child asked. Smiled, "I am a human." "What is a human?" "We come from a planet called Earth, very far away." The child tilted her head. "Are you scared?" Thought about the question. She thought about the burning planet behind them, the dead, the war, the future. "Yes," she said honestly, "but being scared does not mean you stop fighting." The child seemed confused by this. She wandered away to find her mother. Went back to her, she read more reports. She made notes. She thought about patterns and strategies and mistakes. And slowly, an idea began to form in her mind. The transport ship docked at an orbital station above the Solan. Soldiers in gray uniforms guided the refugees off the ship and into processing areas. There were medical checks, registration forms, questions about identity and origin. Moved through it all quietly. She answered questions when asked. She did not attract attention. She was just another refugee, one of thousands. But as she walked through the station, she watched the Solan soldiers. She saw the fear in their movements. She saw the doubt in their eyes. These were not warriors who believed in victory. These were people waiting to lose. Had seen this before, in history books, in old war footage, in the stories of armies that had given up hope. She knew what happened to armies like that. They died, unless someone showed them a different way. Found a quiet corner of the station and sat down. She opened her and began to write. Plans, ideas, strategies, things she had learned from Earth's long and bloody history. Humans had been fighting wars for 200,000 years. They had invented every kind of warfare imaginable. They had destroyed each other with swords, guns, bombs, and things far worse. They had fought in jungles, deserts, cities, and space. They had won impossible victories and survived impossible defeats. If there was one thing humans knew how to do, it was fight. And was starting to think that maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what the Solan needed. Someone who knew how to fight dirty. 3 days passed, stayed in the refugee camp on the surface of the Solan. The camp was crowded and loud, filled with people from a dozen different destroyed planets. Everyone was scared. Everyone was waiting. Spent her time watching and listening. She talked to other refugees. She listened to news broadcasts. She learned everything she could about the war, and the Solan Empire. What she learned was not good. The Solan had been fighting this war for almost 3 years. In that time, they had lost half their territory. Their military was exhausted. Their people were terrified, and their leaders were running out of ideas. The Dominion was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They were not a nation or an empire in the normal sense. They were a single mind spread across billions of bodies. Every drone was connected to a vast intelligence that controlled everything. When one drone learned something, all drones learned it. When one drone saw something, they saw it. This made them nearly impossible to surprise. They adapted to new tactics within hours. They predicted enemy movements with frightening accuracy. They did not argue or disagree or make mistakes. The Solan, by contrast, were individuals. They had generals who sometimes disagreed. They had soldiers who sometimes panicked. They had a government that moved slowly and carefully. Against these weaknesses were fatal. On the third day, heard an announcement. Queen would address the public in the Grand Forum. All citizens were invited to attend. The broadcast would be shown across all surviving worlds. Knew what this meant. She had seen enough political speeches to recognize the signs. This was not going to be a speech about victory. This was going to be a speech about surrender. She made her decision quickly. She left the refugee camp and made her way to the Grand Forum. The forum was massive. It was a great open plaza in the center of the capital city, surrounded by tall white buildings and covered with a dome of clear crystal. Millions of Solan packed the plaza, standing shoulder to shoulder, looking up at a raised platform where their queen would speak. Pushed through the crowd. She was smaller than most Solan, and her brown skin and dark hair made her stand out. A few aliens gave her curious looks, but no one stopped her. She found a spot near the front, close to the platform. The crowd was quiet. The air was heavy with fear and sadness. Could feel it pressing down on everyone. These people had lost homes, families, and hope. They were waiting for their queen to tell them what came next. Then the trumpets sounded, and Queen appeared. She walked slowly onto the platform, her silver skin catching the light. She wore a simple white robe with no crown or jewelry. She looked tired. She looked old in a way that had nothing to do with years. The crowd fell completely silent. "My people," began. Her voice was amplified across the entire forum. "I stand before you today with a heavy heart. For 3 years we have fought against the Dominion. Our soldiers have shown courage beyond measure. Our people have sacrificed everything." She paused, the silence stretched. But courage alone cannot win a war. Sacrifice alone cannot stop an enemy that knows no fear, no doubt, no mercy. Watched the queen's face. She saw the pain there, the shame. This was a woman being forced to say words she hated. "They have offered us terms," continued. "They call it conditional peace. We would keep our lives, our culture, our families, but we would accept their authority. We would become part of their collective." The crowd began to murmur. The sound grew louder. People were angry. People were scared. "I know what you are feeling," said, raising her hand. "I feel it too, but I must think of our future, our children, our survival." She took a deep breath. "We must consider acceptance." The word hung in the air like a death sentence. "You would have us become slaves," a voice shouted from somewhere in the crowd. The murmurs became shouts. People pushed forward. Soldiers moved to protect the platform. The queen raised both hands, calling for silence. Did not shout, she did not push. She simply started walking. She moved through the crowd, slipping between bodies, making her way toward the platform. She did not know exactly what she was going to do. She only knew that she could not stand there and watch an empire surrender. A soldier noticed her and moved to block her path. "Stop there, civilian." "I need to speak to the queen," said. "That is not possible." Looked up at the soldier. He was twice her size, armed with a plasma rifle, trained to follow orders. She was a refugee with nothing but a... "Please," she said, "I know how to help." The soldier hesitated. Something in his eyes made him uncertain. Before he could decide what to do, raised her voice. "Your Majesty." The shout cut through the noise. Turned, looking down at the crowd. Her black eyes found standing near the platform steps, surrounded by soldiers. "Your Majesty," called again. "Before you surrender, may I speak?" The crowd went quiet. Everyone stared at the small human woman who had dared to interrupt their queen. Studied her for a long moment. "You are human," she said. Her voice carried across the forum. "Yes. Your kind has only been spacefaring for 2 centuries. What could you possibly know about a war that has destroyed empires older than your entire civilization? Climb the first step. The soldiers moved to stop her but raised a hand, holding them back. I know about war, Your Majesty said. Humans have been fighting wars for 200,000 years. We have destroyed ourselves more times than we can count. We have invented weapons that could burn entire worlds. We have committed horrors that would make the look kind. She climbed another step. War is not something we learned from the stars. War is in our blood. It is in our history. It is the one thing that humans have always been good at. His expression did not change, but something flickered in her eyes. Interest, maybe, or curiosity. And what makes you think that your experience with human warfare could help us against the... Reached the top of the platform. She stood before the queen, a small brown creature facing a silver goddess. The entire plaza was silent, watching. Because they have never faced anything like us, said. They have conquered logical races, organized races, predictable races. But humans are not logical. We are not predictable. We do not follow rules when we are desperate. We lie, we cheat, we trick, and we refuse to die when we should. She took a breath. They are a hive mind. They share information perfectly. They adapt instantly. They make no mistakes. Smiled, and there was something almost dangerous in that smile. But they have never faced chaos, real chaos, the kind of chaos that only humans can create. Was silent. The crowd was silent. The whole world seemed to hold its breath. You want me to trust my empire to a refugee? Asked quietly. To a member of a species I have barely heard of. No, said. I want you to give me one chance, one battle. Let me show you what humans can do. If I fail, you lose nothing. You can still surrender, but if I succeed... She met the queen's eyes without flinching. If I succeed, I will show you how to win this war. Stared at her for a long moment. Then she turned to Admiral, who had been standing at the edge of the platform. What do you think? She asked. Looked at, his 4 eyes were thoughtful. She is either brilliant or insane, he said. Is there a difference? Asked. Almost smiled. It was the first time he had smiled in months. Turned back to the crowd. Millions of faces stared up at her, waiting, hopping, fearing. I will delay my decision, she announced. For now, we will listen to what this human has to say. Perhaps there is still hope. The crowd erupted. Some cheered, some shouted in protest, some simply stood in stunned silence. Felt the weight of 1 billion eyes on her. She had asked for a chance. Now she had to deliver. She followed Queen off the platform and into the palace, leaving the shouting crowd behind. The doors closed, and suddenly everything was quiet. You have my attention, said. Now tell me your plan. Opened her. How much do you know about guerrilla warfare? The queen's expression was blank. I do not know that word. Smiled. Then this is going to be interesting. The war room was large and cold. A round table sat in the center, surrounded by chairs designed for soul and bodies. Holographic screens covered the walls, showing maps, data, and endless reports of defeats. Stood at the head of the table. Queen sat across from her. Between them sat the 5 most powerful admirals in the Solan Empire. They looked at with doubt, suspicion, and something close to anger. Admiral spoke first. The Queen has given you permission to speak, but I want to be clear. We have been fighting this war for 3 years. We have lost billions of lives. Our best strategists have tried everything. What makes you think a human contractor can succeed where we have failed? Nodded. I understand your doubt. You do not know me. You do not know humans, so let me start by telling you a story. She tapped her and a holographic image appeared above the table. It showed a blue and green planet, Earth. This is she said. Humans have lived there for about 300,000 years, and for most of that time we have been killing each other. She changed the image. Now it showed ancient battles, swords and shields, arrows and spears. We started with simple weapons, rocks, sticks. Then we invented metal and we made swords. We invented gunpowder and we made guns. We invented nuclear energy and we made bombs that could destroy entire cities. The admirals watched in silence. The images kept changing. Tanks, aircraft, missiles, mushroom clouds. Every time we invented a new way to kill, someone else invented a way to survive. We developed armor, fortifications, camouflage, guerrilla tactics, psychological warfare. We learned to fight in jungles, deserts, mountains, and cities. We learned to fight enemies who were stronger, faster, and better equipped. She paused. And we learned something important. The strongest army does not always win. The biggest fleet does not always win. The most organized force does not always win. Sometimes the winner is the one who is willing to be unpredictable, messy, chaotic. Admiral leaned forward. Chaos is not a strategy. Chaos is a failure of command. In your military, yes, agreed. Your forces are organized, disciplined, and coordinated. Every unit follows orders from central command. Every action is planned and approved. This makes you efficient. This makes you predictable. She pulled up a new image, a map of space. They are a hive mind. Every drone is connected to every other drone through They share information instantly. When one drone learns something, all drones learn it. This gives them perfect coordination, perfect communication, zero delay between observation and response. We know all this, another admiral said impatiently. Yes, but do you understand what it means? Asked. It means they cannot handle information they do not understand. Their strength is processing data and finding patterns. But what happens when there is no pattern? The room was quiet. On Earth, we developed something called guerrilla warfare. Small groups operating independently. No central command. No unified strategy. Each group decides its own targets, its own timing, its own methods. From the outside, it looks like chaos. Random attacks with no connection. She smiled. But that randomness is the weapon. The enemy cannot predict what will happen next because there is nothing to predict. There is no pattern to analyze, no strategy to counter, just noise. Admiral shook his head. You are suggesting we abandon coordinated warfare. That would be suicide. No, said. I am suggesting we use both. Your main fleet continues to operate normally. They fight conventional battles. They hold defensive positions. They look like a traditional military. She changed the display again. Now it showed a network of small dots scattered across space. But behind the lines we create something new. Small teams, 5 to 10 soldiers each, humans and Solon working together. They operate independently with full authority to make their own decisions. They strike targets, spread confusion, and disappear before they can respond. What kind of targets? Queen asked. It was the first time she had spoken since the meeting began. Everything and nothing, said. Supply depots, communication relays, fuel stations, but also random targets, empty buildings, abandoned outposts, places with no military value at all. Why would we attack worthless targets? An admiral demanded. To create noise, to process information by finding patterns. If we attack only valuable targets, they will learn to protect valuable targets. But if we attack randomly, they cannot know what to protect. They have to defend everything. They have to spread their forces thin. Pulled up another display. This one showed communication networks. At the same time, we flood their systems with false information. Fake orders, fake reports, fake fleet movements. They trust their information network because it has always been reliable. We make it unreliable. You want to lie to them, said slowly. I want to drown them in lies, corrected. So many lies that they cannot tell what is real. So much false data that there starts to hesitate, starts to doubt, starts to make mistakes. The admirals looked at each other, could see them thinking, processing, struggling with ideas that went against everything they had been taught. There is more, she continued. We also use psychological warfare. We make the afraid. The do not feel fear, an admiral said. Everyone feels fear, replied. Even hive minds. The may not be an individual, but it wants to survive. It wants to protect its drones. We show it that fighting us will cost more than it is worth. She pulled up images of destroyed ships. We do not just kill drones. We make examples. We leave messages. We make the cost of attacking us seem higher than the benefit. We make them think twice. Queen studied the displays for a long moment. This is not how war is supposed to be fought, she said finally. No, agreed. This is how war is won when you are losing. The room was silent again. The admirals looked uncertain. Some looked disturbed, but none of them argued. I need soldiers, said. Volunteers who are willing to fight in new ways. I also need other humans. There are refugees in your camps who have military experience. People like me who know how humans fight. How many? Asked. For the first teams, maybe 50. Humans and Solon together. We train them, test them, and send them on a single mission. If it works, we expand. If it fails, you have lost nothing. She walked to the window and looked out at her city. Millions of her people lived down there, waiting to learn their fate. They have given us 1 month to accept their terms, she said quietly. After that, they will attack us directly. Then we have 1 month to prove this works, said. Turned. You ask me to gamble everything on a strategy invented by a species I barely know. A strategy based on chaos, deception, and methods my people have never used. Yes. And if it fails? Met her eyes. If it fails, I will die with the rest of you, but I would rather die fighting than live as a slave. The queen was silent for a long moment. Then she turned to her admirals. Give her what she needs. Looked shocked, my queen. I said give her what she needs. His voice was firm. We have tried everything else. We have nothing left to lose. She looked at. You have your chance, human. Do not waste it. Bode, I will not. She left the war room with her mind already racing. She had work to do, teams to build, plans to make. And somewhere out in the darkness of space, they were waiting. They had no idea what was coming. The training camp was hidden in the mountains far from any city, had chosen the location carefully. No communications in or out, no records, no way for anyone to know what was happening there. Within a week she had gathered her team. 50 volunteers, half human and half Solon, all willing to learn new ways of fighting. The humans came from the refugee camps, had searched carefully, looking for people with the right skills. She found first. He was a former Special Forces soldier from Korea, a quiet man with hard eyes and steady hands. He had been working as a security guard on a Solon colony when they attacked. He had killed 17 drones with his bare hands before escaping. Next came. She had been an intelligence analyst before leaving Earth, specializing in information warfare and enemy communications. She was small and soft-spoken, but her mind worked faster than anyone had ever met. Then there was a demolitions expert who had been mining asteroids when the war reached him. He was big and loud, always laughing, always joking. But when he touched explosives, he became as careful and precise as a surgeon. Finally, a combat medic who had served in 3 different conflicts on Earth before coming to space. She was calm under pressure, kind to everyone, and absolutely terrifying when someone threatened her patience. Together with the 5 humans began training the Solon volunteers. It was not easy. The Solon were used to fighting in formations. They followed orders. They waited for commands from their superiors. The idea of making their own decisions in battle was strange to them. You have 30 seconds, told a group of trainees on the 3rd day. Enemy patrol approaching. What do you do? The Solon looked at each other, waiting for someone to take charge. Time is passing, said. In 30 seconds you will be dead. One of the Solon finally spoke. We should request instructions from Command. Command is dead. You are on your own, decide. The Solan panicked. They argued. They wasted time. The 30 seconds passed. You are all dead, announced, again. They practiced the same scenario 50 times. Slowly, the Solan began to understand. They learned to trust their own judgment. They learned to act without waiting. They learned to think for themselves. Taught them close combat. Solan soldiers were trained to fight with weapons at a distance. Taught them to fight with their hands, their feet, their teeth if necessary. He taught them to be brutal and fast. Taught them about deception. She showed them how to create fake signals, false reports, and misleading information. She taught them to think like liars. Taught them about explosives, not the clean, military-grade weapons the Solan were used to, but improvised devices made from common materials. Bombs that could be hidden anywhere. Traps that could kill without warning. Taught them to survive, how to treat wounds in the field, how to keep fighting when injured, how to save themselves and their teammates when help was far away. 3 weeks after training began, the first team was ready. Station was a supply hub, floating in space near the border of Solan territory. It was heavily defended, with dozens of warships protecting it. A direct attack would be suicide. Did not plan a direct attack. Instead, she sent ahead. Using stolen codes, sent a fake report to the station. A massive Solan fleet was approaching from the opposite direction. The station needed to send its defenders to intercept. They believed the report. Why would they not? Their information network had never been wrong before. The defending fleet moved away, and in the darkness of space, 3 small ships slipped toward the station. Led the first team. They cut through the station hull, avoiding the main entrances. They moved through service tunnels and maintenance shafts, places they never watched. Planted charges at key points, power generators, fuel storage, communication arrays. Stayed with the escape ship, ready to move the moment the teams returned. The entire operation took 47 minutes. When the teams were clear, sent the signal. Station exploded. The blast destroyed billions of credits worth of supplies and killed thousands of drones. By the time the defending fleet returned, there was nothing left but debris. They was confused. Its network showed no approaching Solan fleet. Its sensors showed no attacking ships. Its drones had seen nothing, heard nothing, detected nothing. The station had simply exploded. For the first time in the war, they did not understand what had happened. Did not give them time to figure it out. Over the next 3 weeks, she launched 14 attacks, supply depots, communication relays, fuel stations. Each attack was different. Each attack came from a different direction. Each attack used different methods. And mixed with the real attacks were fake attacks, explosions at empty buildings, false signals reporting battles that never happened, fake distress calls from ships that did not exist. They tried to find patterns. They analyzed every piece of data. They compared attack locations, timing, methods. They found nothing. Because there was nothing to find. Flooded their communication networks with lies. For every real message, there were 10 false ones. Fake orders from commanders who did not exist. Reports of victories and defeats that never happened. They could not tell truth from fiction. Led raids deep into territory. His team struck targets that made no sense. A food storage facility, an empty barracks, a communications tower that had been abandoned years ago. They could not understand why these targets were chosen. They were not chosen for any reason. That was the point. Planted explosives in places no one would expect. A drone found a bomb hidden inside a shipment of medical supplies. Another bomb was discovered in a waste recycling center. A third destroyed a transport ship carrying nothing but empty containers. They began to hesitate. Every shipment might be a bomb. Every report might be a lie. Every quiet sector might be hiding an attack. For the first time, they were afraid. Back on the Solon, the people began to hope. News of the attack spread quickly. Strange stories about human warriors who struck without warning and disappeared without a trace. Stories about an enemy that could be hurt. Queen watched the reports with wonder. In 3 weeks, this small human woman had done more damage than the entire Solon fleet had done in 3 years. "How is this possible?" she asked during one of their meetings. Smiled, "They are perfect. That is their weakness. They expect the universe to make sense. They expect enemies to behave logically. They have never met a species that refuses to make sense. And humans refuse to make sense." Always said, "It is one of our best qualities." The war was not over. They were still powerful. Their main fleet was still intact. But for the first time, they were reacting instead of acting. They were defending instead of attacking. They were afraid. And that fear was just the beginning. Looked at the star map. There was out there somewhere, protected by thee and billions of drones. Soon, she would bring the war to them. And they would learn what humans were truly capable of. 6 months had passed since stood up in that crowd. 6 months of chaos, deception, and impossible victories. 6 months that had changed the war forever. But now the final battle was coming. They had gathered every ship they had left. 1,000 warships, more firepower than the galaxy had ever seen in one place. They had made a decision. The strange chaos spreading through its ranks had to be stopped. The source had to be destroyed. The Solon. Queen stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the sensor displays. The fleet was approaching, a cloud of death moving slowly through space. "How long until they arrive?" she asked. 3 hours, Admiral replied. His voice was calm, but his 4 eyes betrayed his fear. "We have 400 ships to defend the planet. They outnumber us more than 2 to 1. Stood beside the Queen, studying the displays. She did not look afraid. She looked focused. "They are desperate," she said. "That is good." Good asked. "They are throwing everything at us." "Yes, because we hurt them, because we scared them. A desperate enemy makes mistakes," smiled. "And we are going to help them make as many mistakes as possible." Over the past 6 months had trained hundreds of teams. Humans and Solon working together, spread across the fleet. Each ship carried at least one team. Each team knew their mission. Create chaos, spread confusion, make the fight blind. "Begin Phase 1, ordered. Across the fleet's communication teams went to work. They broadcast thousands of fake signals, false fleet movements, fake distress calls, reports of attacks that never happened. The space around the Solon filled with electronic noise. They tried to process the information. It analyzed every signal, searching for patterns. But there were no patterns, just noise, just chaos. The fleet slowed. They was confused. Its perfect information network was useless. "They are hesitating," said surprised. "They do not know where to attack." "They will figure it out eventually," said. "We need to hit them before they do." She opened a channel to all ships. "This is Begin Phase 2. Throughout the Solon fleet, small ships launched. Not warships, transport ships, cargo vessels, shuttles. Each one carried a team of specialists and enough explosives to destroy a station. They saw the small ships and did not understand. They were not attacking the fleet. They were spreading out, moving in random directions. "What are those ships doing?" a commander asked the. They did not know. Piloted one of the lead ships. He and his team had a specific target, the command vessel, where the strongest connection to the was located. They approached from an unexpected angle, hiding behind debris from earlier battles. They did not see them coming. Why would they? The ship was too small to be a threat. That was exactly what wanted them to think. "Boarding team ready," said quietly, "going in." His ship latched onto the hull of the command vessel. Plasma cutters burned through the metal. Within minutes, and his team were inside. They moved fast. The drones they encountered were not prepared for close combat, had spent months teaching his team how to fight in tight spaces, how to move through enemy ships, how to kill quickly and quietly. They reached the central communication hub in 17 minutes. Charges set, one of his team reported. Good, everyone out now. As they retreated, teams were doing the same thing across a dozen other ships. Carriers, supply vessels, communication relays, each one received a gift of explosives. Back on the flagship, watched the signals from all teams. Green lights appeared on her display. 1, 5, 12, 20. All teams in position, she reported. Queen looked at her. Are you certain this will work? Met her eyes. No, but we are going to find out. She sent the signal. Across the fleet, explosions bloomed. Ships that had seemed untouched suddenly tore apart from the inside. The command vessel's communication hub was destroyed, severing this connection to half its fleet. For one terrible moment, thousands of drones suddenly found themselves alone, disconnected. For the first time in their existence, they had to think for themselves. They did not know how. Now shouted, all ships attack. The Solan fleet surged forward. They hit the while they were confused, while their coordination was broken, while their perfect unity was shattered. The battle was brutal. Ships exploded on both sides. Plasma fire filled space. Debris scattered in all directions. But the Solan fought like they had never fought before. They fought with human ferocity. They improvised. They adapted. They refused to give up even when damaged, even when outnumbered, even when hope seemed lost. Medical teams pushed into active combat zones, rescuing crews from damaged ships. She saved hundreds of lives that should have been lost. Continued flooding communications with false information, making it impossible for the to rebuild coordination. Remaining teams targeted any ship that tried to reorganize, keeping the enemy scattered and confused, and led boarding action after boarding action, tearing through vessels from the inside. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the fleet was broken. Half their ships were destroyed. The rest were scattered, fleeing in all directions. Though its connections severed, its unity shattered, sent a final message across all frequencies. We withdraw. The war is ended. On the bridge of the flagship, Queen stared at the message for a long moment. Then she turned to her officers. Broadcast on all frequencies. The Dominion has fallen. The war is over. The cheering started on the flagship and spread across the fleet. It spread to the planet below. It spread across all surviving Solan worlds. Billions of voices crying out in joy and relief. They had won. Later, after the celebrations had begun, slipped away from the crowds. She found a quiet observation deck overlooking the planet. Fireworks bloomed in the atmosphere below, painting the clouds with color. She heard footsteps behind her. Queen approached and stood beside her. You saved my people, said. You saved my empire. I can never repay that debt. Was quiet for a moment. She watched the fireworks. She thought about the long journey that had brought her here. The fear, the desperation, the choice to stand up when everything seemed lost. I did not do this for payment, she finally said. I was tired of running, tired of watching good people lose. I figured if I was going to die, I wanted to die fighting for something. Studied her, you humans frighten me. Laughed, it was a small, tired laugh. Your Majesty, we frighten ourselves. We have spent our entire history inventing new ways to destroy each other. We are violent, stubborn, and completely irrational. We hold grudges for centuries. We fight wars over things that make no sense. She turned to face the Queen. But we also refuse to give up. No matter how bad things get, no matter how impossible the odds, there is always some stubborn fool who refuses to accept defeat. That is our greatest strength and our greatest weakness. Was silent for a long moment. Then she asked, what will you do now? The war is over. You could go home, return to Earth. Thought about it? Home, a word that had once meant something, but she had changed too much to go back to the life she had left. I think I will stay, she said. There is work to do. Your empire needs to rebuild. Your military needs to learn new ways of thinking. And there are other threats out there. Other enemies who might think your people are weak. She smiled. Someone needs to teach them otherwise. In the years that followed, humans became an important part of the Galactic Council. The Solan Empire offered Earth full membership, and the alliance formed in fire endured for centuries. Military academies across the galaxy began teaching a new doctrine. It was called the human way of war. Its principles were strange and often contradictory. It valued chaos alongside order, deception alongside honor, individual initiative alongside collective action. At the heart of the doctrine was a single phrase, taken from something it said during those desperate early days of the war. If you cannot beat them with strength, confuse them. If you cannot confuse them, outlast them. And if you cannot outlast them, spite them so hard they will wish they had never started. It was, as the galaxy came to understand, a very human philosophy. And somewhere among the stars, on a quiet observation deck, an old woman watched the ships pass by, had lived a long life. She had seen empires rise and fall. She had trained thousands of warriors. She had helped build something lasting. But what she remembered most was that moment in the crowd, when a desperate queen was about to surrender, and a small human woman had stood up and said, "Wait." Sometimes that was all it took. One person, one moment, one refusal to accept defeat. That was the human way. And it had changed the galaxy forever.